CS greetings, CS goers. It's me, Extremes, with Profeci. How you doing, Prof?
I am doing well, thank you very much. Excited for the weekend.
Jeez, it is
Very, very excited.
Wow, yeah. Look at you. You actually looking excited. What is this?
Can't wait. Energy and BVD on LAN again. Who couldn't be excited about that?
Yeah, there's plenty coming up. This is a CS:GO Deeper short in association with Aperture PC, keeping it short rather than the long show. We didn't do the actual show, so we decided let's do a couple of short videos. So in this particular one, we're going to be focusing on the VS Gaming Masters Finals at rAge, which is also happening in addition to the ESL Africa Finals that you mentioned there, Prof. So we'll definitely get straight into it. I think
Yep.
the major thing to be thinking about here is the money. If you're a player, it's 550k on the line. If you come in first place, it's 220,000, which is a rather nice chunk of change. So definitely a lot to play for here.
Yeah, no, there's a big couple of dollar bills waiting for you at the end if you can bank that first place. And as we'll probably go into DC, maybe coining that money for the first time in a long, long time.
Yeah, that's a very distinct possibility. I mean, the thing for this year is that the Dota finals already happened at EGE, so there's no Dota happening at the same time, which I think is going to help viewership a little bit. The fact that it's going to be, the stages are going to be focused only on CS:GO. Of course, you casted the Dota final last year. I casted the CS:GO final, so there's some really weird synchronicity to this whole thing. But well, for us personally, I guess.
Yeah.
But with the actual tournament being CS:GO focused, I think it's just going to be better for the overall viewership experience because I found the fact that it switched between both games on the same stream was a little polarizing. So I think that's definitely going to help. And also the broadcast talent looks to me a little better than the previous VS tournament.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think they have upgraded. Getting Tulani again, tools. I think is going to be pretty good. I don't know. I'm not the panel is a bit odd. I would have been much happier to see Tulani on panel, but as it is, I'm pretty excited for those casting pairs. I think with Tulani and goals on casting, it's going to look good.
Can you say exposition is what we're going to get? Lots of exposition as to what the player is thinking, and that's what I liked about goals' casting.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you want to look at probably the most tactical IGL in South Africa right now, outside of Zero Chance, I mean, that's definitely Tulani.
Yeah, Tulani. I mean, Big Five have done amazing things in the last couple of seasons of ESL, going from what looked like almost an also-ran team, I'd say, to being a really, really big force. And I'd say they're the third best team in South Africa right now. Yeah. So definitely a good brain to have on the panel. I'm really excited to see some of it. Of course, we're going to be.
He's not on the panel though.
He's not on the panel. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Sorry. Why did I just do that?
I have no idea.
He's casting. I agree with you. I would have preferred him on the panel, but we haven't heard him cast, so it could be good. Yeah. Either way, I think the casting combinations are a little bit more balanced this time. But yeah, as you said, we shall see how the whole thing goes overall. And what we're thinking about how it's going to go is that it might be DC taking it. Now, the point that maybe bears pointing out here is that with a lot of these teams, we haven't seen any of them, like what, 3 of them we've seen in broadcasts in ESL Africa. That would be XD, XTC, and DC. The rest, I mean, some of them I recall casting at ESWC in July, but as for tournaments lately,
Veneration has played. I think they played BVD, but I mean it was a BVD with TC standing in for Sonic, so it went to 3 maps, which is pretty much unheard of. But then it's like, oh, but TC was standing in for Sonic, so I suppose
wasn't it Veneration versus Energy actually at ESWC? I'm pretty sure that.
No, not this is ESEA.
Oh, in ESEA, yes.
Like a month or a half ago or so.
Oh, in the quarterfinal stage. Yeah. I mean, Veneration did look good in those isolated outings. I guess we'll have to see. But my overarching point here, I guess, is that the amount of evidence for us to actually analyze is relatively limited in terms of what's gone out on broadcast. The other problem is VODs and things like that are incredibly tough to track down. We've especially found it with trying to figure out some of the ESL games. I mean, it's far less teams, but it's very difficult to track the stuff down. So a lot of what we're going to do here is going to be a little bit of the educated guess, the wild stab in the dark kind of thing, because there just isn't the information available. You know, even if we could just go watch a VOD, but unfortunately things like OCS and ESEA haven't been broadcast consistently, so we can't do it. We've got to go on what we saw at VS Masters and what was it, early July for some of these teams, which is a long,
Yeah,
long time ago. I mean, this is like a literal, veritable eternity
I
separating
mean,
us. I mean, these teams have changed.
the other problem is that like ESEA, while it is a fantastic pickup system, has an absolutely horrendous replay system. Like VODs or not
Yeah.
VODs, demos are like demos exist for from what it seems like 5 days, and then they're gone into the mists of time, and you can never get them back.
How to save
And
server
like
space.
and then like half of them are broken. So I mean, it's going to be really really tough. You know, I do agree with you. I think we are just going to be taking sophisticated wild ass guesses on a couple of these teams.
So let's start with the first sophisticated wild ass guess, which would be damage control. And I think my guess there is winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Pretty much. I think if DC doesn't win this, then they have only themselves to blame. There's no energy, there's no bravado, there's definitely no Big Five. I think
Or
who's
Goliath.
been there. Yeah, I mean, look, I think Goliath and DC are on about the same level, especially once DC's got time to practice. But I think Big Five seems to have gotten DC's number in recent weeks. So, well, I mean, recent months, I'd almost say. So I think DC are all set to finally pick up that chicken dinner. And maybe they'll be, eating themselves hearty this weekend because that is a lot of money that they're going to be winning. But I mean, like I said, if they lose, it's basically only their own fault here. There's none of these teams that could realistically beat DC consistently as such. It's going to be a massive upset if they lose here.
They shouldn't. I mean, there was that anomaly where WOG beat them on Inferno at VS Masters in July. But yeah, I mean, again, it's an anomaly. That's why I use that word, because it shouldn't have happened. And when the rematch happened, they stomped all over them. So
Yeah,
it shouldn't happen. Their opening game is against Pulse, which, I mean, Pulse is arguably the weakest team in this lineup, or near the weakest team. So yeah, that should be an opening win for DC.
yeah, it should be. I mean, they Pulse would need, I think, at least three of their players to go absolutely beast mode, and then expect or hope for one or two of the big DC heavy hitters to go down.
Yeah, but of course the key factor about practice is that damage control for once actually have spent some time practicing, because usually they can't. There's so many official games, every night of the week, that their practice is literally playing tournaments, and that's why they're so stagnant, I think, in terms of their overall level. So it's really.
And I mean, especially because of the fact that for most of the last 2 months, it's been Inson out for 1 week, and then, or no, what he was out for like 3 weeks, so he was gone.
Mhm.
That's the IGL. Then the week after that, it's explicit not playing, or it's APOC not playing. So it's like they never seem to actually be playing with their full five man. And I think with the amount of time that I hear they've been spending, I think that is going to be a much better looking damage control than previous years.
Well, let's hope so. I'm actually rooting for them. The last time they won a tournament was in CS:GO, and the only tournament they won was the inaugural IS Invitational in 2013, which is a heck of a long time ago. But if you look at their winning streak of, well, not winning streak, but their streak of third place finishes, it goes back. It's almost 2 years. I mean, it was only broken at ESWC, so definitely a team that should, based on form and recent history, they should have this. Next, we'll go
Yeah.
to XTC Gaming. On this one, I kind of feel like since they lost those three players who went and formed, well, they went to Aperture and formed Aperture Black, and then they left Aperture and did their own thing in Skeletons again. That would be P&D, Turtle, and Iskaboot. They I thought it would be a bad thing for them in that they would be a lot weaker, and they've gotten three former Ventus players, and they were weak, to be fair, in ESL Africa. They really struggled for the first few weeks. In the last 2 weeks, they looked a lot better, and from what I've seen of their recent results, they've been a little bit better. But is it, XTC in general are that team that always failed on LAN, for the last sort of 2 years? Looked good online, always failed on LAN. Is it going to happen again, or would I be crazy in saying that they should actually be near the top. Yeah.
I think they are near the top. But it all depends on how that team is going to gel on LAN. That's the problem. It's very, very different sitting online and having Zin talking to you rather than having him sitting next to you and you needing to adapt on the fly on LAN with people watching. So I think XTC should make top 4. I think it's reasonable to call them top 2, but they're going to need to perform fairly well. Like I don't think it's this is not just like if they pitch up they'll make top 2. Like they're going to actually have to perform better than what we've seen thus far to make top 2.
And also exorcise those demons, those LAN demons. I mean, I remember walking past them in Northgate on Saturday night last year at the whole rAge and Masters thing, and they just looked like they'd had a death in the family or something, because they had a really good Eve Tech Champions League and then move from that event, get to VS, and just get they didn't even make it to the main stage. So definitely a perennial problem with that team, and I hope they can fix it. One thing I must say is Crick has been looking really good, and I mean he didn't look good in Ventus, but for XTC he's been looking pretty powerful, actually, like a potential star player. So I'm actually quite excited to see how he does.
Yeah, he's definitely going to need to be one of the guys that goes big for XTC at this event. Like I said, I think Zin's going to be for me, I think Zin's the most important, mostly because it's about how he leads the team and whether he can get them to work together. But they are going to need some of their firepower to pitch. Zin's looked good of late, but they definitely need Crick amongst others to get that spot.
To get them over the line, indeed. And I don't know, also the fact that Zip Zip is AWPing as much as Zin, in fact probably more, it's maybe frees up Zin a little bit with the responsibility not resting on him quite as much, because I mean he was for a stage AWPing, in-game leading, top fragging, doing everything.
I think the biggest problem with that is that, like, Zip Zip is notorious for not doing much on LAN. So
this is true.
I mean, to be fair, his last LAN, which I think was he at ESWC? Because I know he was at Masters.
Yeah, he was with Ventus at ESWC.
Okay, I didn't see him.
He did have one really good map at ESWC, but that's also a hallmark of his like knockout phase play, has been like really bad performances and really where did that come from sort of performances as well, where he gets 30 kills or something. So he's a bit of a wild card, but I don't know if that's always the greatest thing in your primary AWPer.
No, I mean XTC, that's not the kind of player that you ride to a final. Like Crick is definitely going to have to pitch, Zin is definitely going to have to pitch, and then they're going to have to pray, throw the bones and hope that Zin or Zip Zip has a good game in a match that matters.
Yeah, that is definitely the case, I think. We'll move on to XD. I mean, XD have been okay in ESL Africa, but they've had some rather painful blowout losses as well since Spoof left. The in-game leader, the legendary in-game leader, shall we say, as well. I mean, Mr. P90 himself not around anymore, and they've looked a little bit less sure of themselves. They've looked a bit more rudderless, actually.
A lot more. I mean,
I was trying to be kind.
They look entirely rudderless at times. The difference is that they have an obscene amount of firepower in relation to the rest of the teams at this LAN. Like, if Mockmo can ever decide to arrive for consistent series, I mean, they can actually give damage control a lot of problems here. Blaze also. I mean, most of that XD team from last season that looked fairly good in a couple of games and actually took an online game off of BVD still exists. So, I mean, the fact that they don't have Spoof is obviously a big deal, but I mean, XD has a ton of firepower for this LAN. And I mean, in my opinion, I think they're probably going to make second, but they could at the same time end like 5th to 6th if those guys don't gel and things don't go their way.
Yeah, I'd entirely agree with you there. It's really down to the firepower all happening at the same time, and them also getting the right sort of maps that they're able to deploy that. Because I think against maybe somebody like a DC, if they get a game against them, life could be a little tough because DC is not going to allow you to do that. So we'd have to see how it goes for them. I think they should be in sort of a third or fourth place sort of position, maybe even in the final if they have this sort of run where they get the right sort of opponents and the right kind of maps. But a team like DC, if they do meet them in a final, I think is going to take them apart a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think DC's playstyle just is going to hard counter XD because they're very, very deliberate and slow about what they do. And XD is, especially without spoof, I think pretty heavy on wanting to just take gun battles all day long. And I don't know if that's the best idea, especially if DC's players are on point. I just don't see XD winning those fights very often.
Yeah, in the theoretical chance that it actually happens. I mean, King's got a lot of firepower. Blaze is really good. Macma, as you mentioned, they definitely got plenty to work with. The thing we saw with them this season also is a ton of roster instability with changes. I mean, Tabo, the new guy, he had a couple of absolute mares, and he also had a couple of decent games. So
yeah,
definitely we need to just see a little bit more of them together and on land to really gauge them. But they've got the firepower to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, firepower. If it works, it works.
Yeah, their opening game is against Ventus, so that should be theoretically a win for them, I think.
Fairly simple one, just because Ventus has lost. It's probably, I'd say, it's 3 of its best players to XTC, so they're also in that kind of rebuilding mode at this point.
Yeah, well, let's jump to Ventus quickly. I mean, they lost Trick, Maniac, and Zip Zip, which is a pretty good core. I mean, Maniac is experience rather than firepower. I mean, of course, he probably thinks that he's got plenty, and he does more than we do, undoubtedly. But he's more of a stabilizing force, and losing that level of stability from your team as well is quite a thing. So I mean, Unreal, of course, is. Well, I mean, we played a Billisoft with him the other day, and he was just wrecking everybody. I mean, there were a bunch of big 5 players on the server, and he was just going crazy. I mean, the guy at a pretty advanced stage, similar to us, in the 3-0s. He's okay. You're a little younger, but he's really even with age, he hasn't lost anything. He's, if anything, become even more explosive, and he's the leader of the team. But then you got the double whammy and the, how should I say, catch-22 at the same time of, yeah, it's great that he's a big fragger and he's the leader, but being both also means that it's very difficult to consistently be good at both.
Yeah, and the problem is that, like, generally when a team is that reliant on a single player, especially, I mean, is Unreal the primary AWPer? He should be, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he's going to AWP a lot.
Okay, so I mean, primary AWPer, hard carry, team captain. That is an awful amount to be banking on one player. So if he can do it, I think Ventus maybe make up for. If he can't, I mean, it might be as low as 5th or 6th.
Yeah, I mean, I like Unreal. Dylan's a good guy. He's a good player, but if they come in the top half, I'd be happy for them. But I think more likely is sort of 7th, 8th kind of position. Now, yeah. I mean, is obviously we've mentioned their opening game is against XD, so they're probably set to take a little bit of pain there. And if we talk about an in-game leader who's also a big fragger, well, let's jump to Pulse. Pulse have got Casimir. He was in APG at the last VS Masters LAN. Casimir is the hard carry of the team, and he is the in-game leader. So same thing here, really. A lot of responsibility on, and I mean, he's a much younger player as well.
Yeah, and I mean, the problem here is that they've drawn the shortest of sticks in damage control.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with DC is that, like, I think the only chance that Pulse has is maybe coming in with DC being a bit cold type thing.
But short on playtime that morning because the game starts early, sort of thing.
I mean, if you looked at the last Masters LAN, like, DC actually took a couple of games to get into it. They lost the game to White Rabbit, and they really struggled against Southern 5. And they really struggled against, I think it was Veneration, if I remember correctly. And then by the time that you could see them starting to really heat up, I mean, they slammed White Rabbit, and then they actually took a game off of Energy on Cobble, which is Energy's strongest map at the time. So, or the second strongest map after Train. So I think if Pulse catches DC napping, maybe they have a chance. But if DC walks into that and they are, any semblance of a running engine, I can't see Pulse taking that. I think that's going to be a brutal put down from the old boys.
You almost describe them like picking up momentum like a literal train, start out slow and then just be unstoppable. Guess we shall
Yeah.
see. I mean, for Pulse, they're going to feel confidence after winning Metal States Matrix Maverick Challenge, but the problem is that it was against lower tier opponents, so it is quite a bridge between Pixel Hunters, who are a good team, but they're definitely not a DC, so it's a massive step, and I think that's maybe going to catch them a little bit.
Yeah, it's that rarefied air where it's like, I mean, DC lives in that zone where they're constantly playing the energies, the BVDs, the big fives, where it's like small mistakes kill you.
Mm.
And I mean, DC's been on the receiving end of that multiple times, where they make a small mistake and then they get absolutely hammered. I think a team like Pulse, I just don't see them having enough in the tank to punish DC as hard as those other teams will. So DC will get away with a mistake or two, and then they're going to really put the hurt on Pulse.
Yeah, I think that's likely. I mean, I do like Casemiro as a player. I think he is definitely one for the future in a lot of ways. The fact that he's got so much tactical awareness and fragging abilities matured well. But yeah, I just think it's a bridge too far for the boys and the girl. Shaz is there too. So
Look, it's valuable experience. This is the kind of thing that Pulse needs to have, and I think any spot outside of seventh or eighth is going to be something that they'll be really, really. I wouldn't say happy about, but I think they'll be excited to make it out of the seventh or eighth spots, just given the lack of experience they have at this level.
yeah,
Like they've all,
yeah, sorry.
they've always been at this level type thing, like as in like individual players. But I think if they can make it to fifth, sixth, it'll be something to work on maybe for next season.
Yeah, that would be a huge result. I think that would almost be an overperformance. But if they can get that, I'd be super happy for them because that would be mission accomplished. More likely, we're likely to see sort of a seventh to eighth sort of scenario. But let's hope for them that they do pull through. We'll jump over to Veneration. We were mentioning them a little bit earlier about some of their performances. I mean, I casted them versus Energy in the semi-final at the ESWC qualifiers at Rush Expo. That arena event, and they really gave Energy a hard time. I mean, which was kind of funny because one of the maps was Cash, and the Energy actually looked to be in trouble for a bit there. But Energy, of course, did go on to win the whole tournament, but Veneration did make a good account of themselves. Now, the problem I think is I haven't really seen them much else. I mean, you also mentioned the previous Masters tournament as well. ESEA, shall I say, the quarterfinal against Bravado. But we don't have a huge sample size of what we've actually seen of them. The good news for them is that Bananas has actually come out of retirement to play this LAN, and he's always been really good at rAge for some reason. So that's going to be a boon for them. Where do you see them finishing?
I think they're in that pack with XTC and XD. Could make the final, likely top four at the very least. Like I think if Veneration gets anything other than a top four here, they'd probably be disappointed, and they're definitely going to be aiming for at the very least a final spot, and they certainly have it. I mean, Zio, old-time customer, has been around for many, many years, still can pull out those crazy games, and with Bananas back, hopefully he's ready and willing to rock, because he can be a massively potent force if he's on his game.
Yeah, and also Slurry there as well. I mean, he's had a good time last year at DGC. He was just raking people down in the basement. So let's see if he can replicate those sorts of performances as well. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic for Veneration. Hopefully they do live up to their potential. Then we got Aperture Gaming as well. Actually, I mean, we mentioned Veneration are playing against. Oh no, we didn't. Sorry, Veneration are actually playing against Aperture. Sorry, so that's going to be the opening matchup, and I think let's talk about Aperture a little bit, and then we'll maybe throw in a prediction for that. Aperture were pretty good. I mean, I think better than what they were expecting at VS Masters in July. They beat XD, which is I think a good achievement considering that XD had spoof. And then they got knocked out by WOG. So I mean, I thought Casimir was their best player then, and now of course he's with Pulse, so that's been removed. But Chizzy has come in from F3, and they've got Divo, who's a pretty good aimer as well. I mean, we saw a lot of him playing for F3 as a sub in ESL Africa.
Yeah, I don't know, like really what to think of Aperture at the moment. Like Shizzy hasn't been there long. He can be a monster, but we haven't actually seen much of him this year. Like he's been okay, but then at the same time, do you really expect Shizzy to just be okay when he comes in with the rep that he does from online play?
Yeah, there was some idiot that made a video about him, but yeah, we won't talk
Yeah,
about that.
idiot that wears funny hats all the time. But
Don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. Like Aperture is a weird one.
Yeah,
Like maybe fifth to sixth. I think it's really going to depend what teams they play.
Yeah, I think they're a hard one to peg just because we have so little evidence of this current roster. I think I mean the roster is still more or less there, but it's still a little difficult to really place. I think they have good potential, and particularly with Kasparov is a pretty decent leader as well. I mean, he's a funny guy, but he also does lead his team fairly well. They should be okay for a fifth to sixth, but the problem is depending on who they run into after the initial matchup, they could also get absolutely stomped by like a DC or an XTC or somebody like that. So we'd have to see how it works out for them. They've got. I mean, we keep using the word firepower. They do actually have firepower in Shizzy and Divo, but I just feel, on current form of those players and just the overall whole, I don't feel as optimistic for them for this LAN as for the previous one.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Divo is going to pitch. I definitely think he's. You can bank on him for at least doing some of the work, but I think Shizzy is the really as Shizzy goes, Aperture goes. If he has a bad tournament, I think Aperture has a bad tournament. If he has a good one, they'll have a good one.
Yeah, I think that is actually a really good point. And, again, of late, he hasn't really been the force that he was in the past. So let's see, maybe he can pick himself up. I think odds on sort of top six is really where they should be. But let's see what happens. And I mean, it's Aperture versus Veneration as the opening game. And I think Veneration definitely have the edge there.
Yeah, I do think so. I think that match is also going to give us a good indication of where they stand in the pecking order at the moment.
Yeah, that's I think also what's great about a lot of these opening matches is that they are going to give us a lot of context, which is something we lack a little bit of, current context, current lineups, that sort of thing. So definitely going to be helpful from that point of view. And talking about said context, White Rabbit Gaming, massive overperformers at the previous VS Masters tournament in July, finishing fourth, which is I don't think anybody would have predicted.
No, that would have been very, very odd. I mean, it did help that they beat DC in a best of one.
Mm-hmm.
So again, really dependent. I mean, their first match is against who?
Yeah, that is.
Would be XTC.
Which is a tough one.
I think they have a reasonable shot at beating XTC.
I think they could. I mean, talking about the context thing, if WOG knock over XTC, then I mean that actually changes a lot for this tournament. If it goes the other way, then it sort of confirms what we were thinking about XTC. But to me, WOG are very much a dark horse in this tournament because of how well they did previously and because of how little evidence we have of them recently. Also, lineup changes. Puffy is back for Beasus, who of course, went over to XD and called himself Beast instead, just to confuse us.
Yeah. Change teams, change names.
Orpa goes to another team that already has 3 Orpas, so, as you do.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. I don't know. White Rabbit, I think Puffy's probably a more consistent Orpa than Beasus.
The more consistent of 2 streaky Orpas.
Yeah. So I think White Rabbit XTC is probably the closest.
Opening matchup,
sorry.
yeah.
I think it's actually the second closest. I think the Veneration Aperture is going to decide things, and the White Rabbit XTC are the 2 matches to watch in the opening rounds.
Yeah, I think that, to me, XTC White Rabbit is going to be really close. I think WOG, I mean, the crazy thing with them is if they replicate their form at the previous tournament, it would actually be backwards progress in a lot of ways because the previous tournament had a much more stacked lineup with energy and bravado in there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, again, it was an outlier, a massive overperformance. I really hope for them that they can do that. I mean, White Rabbit, of course, one of my mates plays in the team. Well, mates now. We used to hate each other's guts when we played in the same team, but so spins the wheel of life. But I think for WRG, they're going to be targeting fourth base, and that's possible. But they could also get slammed at this tournament as well. So
Yeah.
I just don't know. I really hope they end up in the top four.
I think White Rabbit Gaming should be aiming for top 4, but like it'll be an achievement if they make it. If you understand the way I'm saying that.
Yeah, they're definitely a little bit of an outlier, a little hard to peg. But let's see how they go, man. I'm excited to catch some of the action. Of course, we're going to be working on ESL Africa, so we won't have a ton of time. But when we do have time, definitely be checking it out. Maybe pop over to the stage as well and watch some of the games if I can. So definitely looking forward to the tournament. Any final thoughts?
Just want to see DC win something, eh?
Yeah, well,
it's gonna be great.
We can get Chris off our backs, eh?
Something like that. No, I mean, I think this is a very good tournament to see where I'd say almost like the second tier of South Africa stands. Because right now we know that BVD and Energy are so far beyond the rest that like it's almost scary. I think it would have been this would have been a lovely tournament for someone like Goliath or Big Five to attend.
Because so they could have also potentially won it.
That would have been a super interesting land then. I think DC Big Five Goliath would have been an incredibly spicy tournament, especially with XD and XTC hanging around. Because I mean, while those top three teams can really wreck each other, they get caught by an XTC on a good day. They could, in theory, lose out or something like that. So I think it is a bit disappointing that Goliath and Big Five couldn't play, but unfortunately that is the contractual situation, so it is what it is. Damage control stays to lose. Nobody else to blame but themselves if they don't make it, so let's go DC.
Quite right. So this has been CSGO Deeper, sponsored by Aperture PC. We wanted to keep it short, and then it ended up being somewhere in between. So hope you enjoyed the video. Drop a like, drop a comment, and drop by ESL Africa when you're at rAge if you happen to be there this weekend, and definitely pop down and see the VS Masters as well. Cheers.
Cheers.